Hello and good evening everyone and welcome to this live session. Good evening guys. कैसे हैं आप सब लोग? क्या आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं? Please confirm in the chat box. Good evening Anuraj. Good evening Manvi. Good evening Mr. Pediwal. Good evening Sailuthra Khushi. Zainab. Good evening. Good evening. CSCSCM and Nikhil Gupta. So guys, there is another CSCSCM and Nikhil Gupta in the room now. So today I'll be relieved of taking this class. The class will be taken by the real CSCSCM Nikhil Gupta. Sahu, good evening. Am I audible and visible to all of you? Yes, sir. Lavanya, good evening. Mansi Srivastav, Guru Aparajita, good evening. Yes, good evening. Shrey Sharma, Chirag Khemani. इतने दुष्ट बच्चे हैं मेरा नाम यूज कर रहे हैं अपने चैट बॉक्स में अपने नाम के आगे CSCSCM निखिल गुप्ता और निखिल में डबल के ही लगाया है इतने दुष्ट बच्चे शायद ही मैंने कभी देखे होंगे अरे बाप रे गुड इवनिंग एवरीवन एंड वेलकम टू द लाइव सेशन ऑफ द GST marathon and yes the marathon is going to start in a short while and yes guys there is a link which is highlighted please mark your attendance in that link you will get some benefits if you mark the attendance in the link which is given which is highlighted in the chat box. Loshni, Manvi, yes, good evening. All right, guys. So in the last session, we had studied the value of supply, okay? Again, for your reference, the basic charging section of GST, which is section number 9, basic charging section of the GST. And yes, in that particular section, we are referring to the value of supply. How is value of supply determined? That is what we were discussing in the last lecture. So what is today's lecture all about? Today's lecture is time of supply. What will be the time when we will consider the supply has happened? Because guys, time is also of essence while we consider supply. So today we are going to start our provision on time of supply. So what is the time of supply? Guys, the GST rates can undergo a change over a period of time. So it is very, very important to determine at what time has the transaction happened, which is the time of supply. So today we are going to start time of supply, section 12, 13 and 14 of the CGST Act. All right, time of supply. How to determine at what point of time the supply has happened? This is the question under consideration in today's session. Now, guys, we have divided the entire discussion in two parts, time of supply of goods and time of supply of goods and services, both. Good and time of supply in case of services. So time of supply in case of goods, time of supply in case of services, and time of supply in case of goods and services. So section 14 is common to both goods and services. Section 12 is on goods and 13 is on services. So now let's start with time of supply in case of supply of goods. When will we consider that time of supply will be there for any supply of goods which is made during the tenure? Yes, sir. So goods, section 12. Goods are divided into various parts. We'll discuss the time of supply in case of forward charge mechanism. We'll discuss the time of supply in case of reverse charge mechanism. We'll discuss the time of supply in case of vouchers, other cases, and interest payment and late fees. So this is what we are going to discuss in our discussion with respect to time of supply in case of goods. So let's start. Okay, so guys, in case of goods, the time of supply depends also on the time in which the tax invoice is to be raised. So before we come on to time of supply of goods, let's study what are the timelines which are required to be fulfilled in respect of raising a tax invoice. So tax invoice is to be raised appropriately. Within the specified time. So we need to ascertain when should the tax invoice be raised. So let's first of all study the time which is fixed for raising the tax invoice. All right, sir. So in case of periodic supply of goods, when the goods are being supplied, then what is the timeline up till which the invoice is to be raised? It is to be raised when the goods which involve movement, which means goods are transferred from the seller's place to the buyer's place. In that case, date of removal of goods is the date when the the tax invoice should be raised. And the goods which are not involving movement, if the goods are not involving movement, just like I told you that, you know, someone wants to buy my studio along with all the equipments, all the goods which are there inside it. If it does not involve movement, then the date of delivery or making available the goods to the recipient, that will be the time of supply. That will be the date when invoice is to be raised. So invoice is to be immediately raised on removal of goods in case the goods involve movement. And in case goods do not involve movement, then the date of delivery or making available of the goods will be the relevant time when the time of supply can be ascertained, or invoice has to be issued. We are currently studying about when should the tax invoice be issued, when should the GST invoice be issued. So the fake CSCSCM Nikhil Gupta is at play, and the fake CSCSCM Nikhil Gupta is also explaining some stuff. Okay, so in case of continuous supply of goods, when the goods are not periodically supplied, but they are continuously supplied. So guys, this typically happens in FMCG sector a lot. So, you know, if you are into manufacture of bread, then you need the flour, the wheat flour that comes, keeps on coming on in your factory on a regular basis. And periodically, I mean, after a while, after 15 days or after 20 days, there'll be a statement which will be prepared, and then the settlement will be done. This is known as continuous supply of goods. In case of continuous supply of goods, when the statement or when the receipt of payment is done, then we raise the tax invoice. That is the deadline of raising the tax invoice. Of course, guys, we can raise the tax invoice anytime earlier, but not later than the events which are written over here. So this is the ultimate timeline within which the tax invoice is to be raised. Now, in case of goods when they are removed on sales or return basis, you know, the goods are it is agreed that goods will be returned if they are not found suitable. In that case, guys, the goods, whenever they are supplied, whenever they are accepted by the recipient, or 6 months from the date of removal, whichever is earlier, that is the maximum time up to which tax invoice is to be raised. So why did you teach tax invoice to us in time of supply chapter? Because, guys, we will use this timeline while determining the time of supply in case of goods. So now let us see what is the time of supply in case of goods, especially in case of forward charge mechanism. Okay, this is the time of supply in case of goods, in case of forward charge mechanism. I hope you can see the board well. Okay, time of supply in case of forward charge mechanism, section 12, subsection 2. Earlier of the following dates should be considered as time of supply of goods. Number one, date of issue of invoice. We have just seen the due date of issue of invoice. There'll be an actual date of issue of invoice also. So either the due date of issue of invoice or the actual date of issue of invoice, whichever is earlier, will be the time of supply of that particular good to the recipient. Now, there's a third limit also, which is receipt of payment. Now, guys, in case of receipt of payment can never be earlier in case of goods. Why? Because even if we are getting any advance in case of supply of goods, GST is not eligible, is not liable, leviable on that particular advance. So receipt of payment is an irrelevant entry because of notification number 66 of 2017. I hope you remember this notification. Very, very, very important notification. Because of it, which this benchmark as of now is absolutely irrelevant. You just have to see two things: date of issue of invoice, actual date of issue of invoice, or due date of issue of invoice, whichever is earlier, is actually the time of supply, is actually the time of supply of goods in case of forward charge mechanism. Okay, sir, got it? Now let us see what is the time of supply in case of reverse charge mechanism. So guys, if there is a reverse charge mechanism, which means that recipient is actually fulfilling all the conditions which are there with respect to payment of GST, compliances, etc., etc., and the GST is also paid by the recipient of services and not the supplier. This is known as the reverse charge mechanism. Guys, in this particular case, the time of supply will be ascertained as per earlier of these three limits. What are the three limits? Okay, let's see. So first limit is 31st day from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. So over here, when you are determining the time of supply in case of reverse charge mechanism, guys, there's a leeway of 30 days which is given for making the ascertaining the time of supply. Why? Because the supplier will raise the invoice and it will deliver to the recipient. This might take some time. Therefore, in reverse charge mechanism, there's extra 30 days window, there's an extra 30 days bracket which is given to the supplier and the recipient to consider the time of supply of goods. So time of supply of goods, first limit is 31st day from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. The second timeline is date of receipt of goods by the recipient. Recipient will receive the goods. That will be the second timeline which is to be seen while computing the time of supply. What is the third one? Third one is date of payment. So whenever the date of payment happens, then guys, that date will be considered as the time of supply if it is earlier of the 3 dates. Okay. Now, one very important thing, guys, notification number 66 is not applicable on inward supplies. Since now we are considering inward supplies because the compliances are being done on recipients, the fundamental of that advance is not applicable on goods. That is not applicable in case of inward supply. So notification number 66 doesn't apply in this particular case. So date of payment or date of receipt of goods or 31st day from the date of issue of invoice by the supplier. These are the 3 timelines. Earlier of these 3 timelines will be taken as the time of supply of goods in case of reverse charge mechanism. This is reverse charge mechanism. Okay, then proviso to section 12.3. When time of supply is not determinable as per 12.3. Okay, when in reverse charge mechanism time of supply is not determinable as per section 12.3, then guys, in that case time of supply will be date of book entry in the books of the recipient, that is provision which is created in the books of accounts. So sometimes what happens is, a provision entry is done in the books of accounts of the recipient. Recipient is not entering, the recipient has not received the goods, he has not received the invoice, he has not done the payment. All the 3 benchmarks or the events have not taken place, but yes, the recipient has provided the expenditure in the books of accounts by way of a provision. In that particular case, guys, the date when the provision is put in the recipient's financial statements, that date will be considered as the time of supply. So time of supply is ascertained even when the recipient has not received the goods, when he has not received the invoice, or he has not given the payment. Even then the time of supply can be ascertained using the book entry in the books of the recipient. Sometimes recipients are very smart, guys, very, very smart. They would just to avoid the time of supply, to defer the time of supply, they would just not receive the goods or on time. They will not get the invoice, or they will not issue the payment, just to avoid the time of supply. Therefore, guys, this proviso has been added in section 12.3, that date of book entry will be taken as the time of supply in this particular case. Okay, next one is section 12.4. In case of vouchers, guys, we had discussed vouchers in our last class. Okay, vouchers are the gift coupons which is given to the employees by the company, and yes, company purchases this gift coupons from the mall and from various shopping centers. Now there are 2 types of vouchers where the supply is identifiable at the time of selling of voucher, when the supply can be identified that yes, this particular voucher will be redeemed against bags or against clothes or against shoes. We understand and we we know that this voucher will be redeemed against a particular specified good. In that particular case, guys, the the date of issue of voucher will be the relevant time of supply. But in case where we do not know what is the good which is going to be purchased from this particular voucher, then guys, at the time of redemption, the time of supply will be ascertained. Naturally, guys, every good has a different GST rate. Okay, so depending upon what good is being bought from this particular voucher, that will be the determining criteria of determining whether the redemption date will be relevant for time of supply or issue date will be relevant for time of supply. So this is the case of voucher. Now coming on to the case, residual case. Okay, now guys, sometimes what happens is there are defaulters. This residuary case is in case of defaulters. So there are defaulters. Defaulters means people who have not fulfilled the GST. They have not filed the GST. They have not filed the returns. They are not maintaining invoices. They don't have any payment traces. They are receiving money in cash, etc., etc. There are defaulters who have not paid GST, who have not complied with the GST norms. Guys, for those defaulters, if the officer catch a hold of them, then what will be the time of supply? Because the officer will actually do a search in that particular area. The survey will be done in that particular area, and after doing the survey, they can find out that yes, supplies have been done from this particular premises, this particular office. Supplies have been done, but the traces of supply have been deleted by the suppliers. Absolutely, from the base, the traces of supply has been deleted. Now, this can be a problematic situation for the tax officers. In this case, guys, whatever goods they have discovered that this will be the goods which are the goods which are being sold, or goods which are being supplied from that area, they get a hold of those goods. But GST cannot be levied unless and until time of supply is ascertained, and we have no clue when the goods have been moved. We have no clue when the invoice has been raised. We have no clue when the payment has been done. Nothing has been done. We have no clue. Then in that case, guys, this particular section is used, a very, very important section, section 12.5, which is the residual cases, especially in case of defaulters. So when periodical return is to be filed, in case of registered persons who are registered, who are required to periodically file the return, we will assume that time of supply will be due date of filing of the return, which is to be filed. Okay. In cases where periodical return is not to be filed, where periodical returns are not to be filed, which means cases of unregistered person, guys, in that particular case, time of supply will be date of payment of taxes. Whenever the taxes are paid, actually, the date when the assessing the relevant officer will ascertain the taxes, that day will be considered as time of supply of those goods. Because, guys, we have no clue when is the time of supply. We have no clue when the goods have been transferred. We have no clue when the invoice has been raised. We have no clue at all. So these are the guidelines which are given by the GST Act. Then time of supply in case of interest, penalty, fee for late payment of consideration. So what will be the time of supply when any interest, penalty, or fees for late payment is given to the to any person, any contractor? Okay, now a question for you. Please comment in the chat box. A question for you. Please comment in the chat box. If I were to ask you what is the time of supply in case of normal interest on deposits, advances, loans, normal interest, what will be the time of supply? What would have been your answer? This is the case where TOS of interest penalty for late payment is being ascertained. I am asking you, normal interest, what will be the TOS in case of normal interest? Interest in case of advances, loans, deposits, etc. The normal interest. What will be the TOS in that case? That is the question. Please answer in the chat box. I'm waiting for your answers, guys. Waiting for your answers. Yes, sir. Are the answers ready? Let me see. Let me see the answers. Due date. No. I'm asking about the normal interest. Guys, the answer is that normal interest is not taxable. When the normal interest is not taxable, there's no question of TOS in that case. Please tell me, is the normal interest taxable under GST? Answer is no. It is exempt from GST. The normal interest is exempt from GST. Supply की category में ही नहीं आता. Yes, absolutely exempt. Yes, that is the correct answer. So, guys, in case of this interest, which is on late payment of consideration, fees for late payment of consideration, in this, the date when such amount is received by the supplier, whenever this amount is received by the supplier, that will be considered as the time of supply. Please note that due date is not the relevant date for considering time of supply. In this particular case, it is the date when it is actually received by the supplier. Okay, sir, got it. So these were the sections on time of supply in case of goods. Now we move on to the time of supply in case of services. What will be the time of supply in case of services? That is what we are going to study now. So, guys, before we study time of supply in case of services, let us study what is the tax invoice due date in case of services, because tax invoice due date will be considered while calculating the time of supply in case of services. Okay, so let's study what is the tax invoice due date in case of services. So tax invoice due date in case of services, when there are periodic supply of services, which means services are rendered after every few months or weeks or something like that. They are not continuous. Okay, in that case, guys, in case of NBFC, insurance, banking companies, if the services are given by these entities, then 45 days of supply of services. And in case of other services, any other services, in case of any other services, 30 days of supply of services. So this is the timeline which is given for the periodic supply of services. If you have periodic supply of services, then 30 days in case of other services, but 45 days in case of NBFC, insurance, banking company, etc. Okay, sir. Then, guys, in case of continuous supply of services, if you are continuously supplying services, which means your services are rendered on a regular basis and you are continuously supplying services, in this case, now, if due date of payment is ascertained from the is ascertainable from the contract, if the contract states the due date of payment, if the contract has mentioned about the due date of payment, then that due date becomes the time of becomes the tax invoice date. Okay, if the contract specifies the due date when the payment is to be done for these services, then due date of payment, this becomes the time of supply. And if the due date of payment is not ascertainable from the contract, if no one can ascertain what is the payment due date from the contract, it's not written in the contract actually, then guys, receipt of payment is the relevant date which is to be considered. Whenever the payment is received, on that date we'll consider that time of supply tax invoice is to be raised. Okay, so these are the timelines for the tax invoice to be raised. These are timelines. Okay, why are we studying these timelines? We are studying these timelines because we want to know what is the time of supply of the services. So we are studying timeline of tax invoices. Okay, so now let's move on to the time of supply. Okay, yes, time of supply in case of services. Time of supply in case of services. What is the time of supply in case of services? Time of supply in case of services, that too forward charge mechanism. So first we'll deal with the forward charge mechanism. Guys, in case of forward charge mechanism, when interest is raised within due date specified under section 31, when you raise the interest, when you raise the invoice on time, then the time of supply will be earlier of date of issue of invoice or receipt of payment. Earlier of date of issue of invoice or receipt of payment, that will be the time of supply for the invoices which have been raised within the due date. Date of issue of invoice or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, is the date when the TOS should be ascertained. Now again, guys, in case of goods, the receipt of payment is not a relevant factor, but this is the case of supply of services. So receipt of payment will be a relevant factor because notification 66 is not applicable over here. Okay, so invoice raised within due date, invoice not raised within due date. If you do not raise the invoice within the timeline which is given under section 31, then what happens is date of provision of services, earlier of date of provision of services or receipt of payment, whichever is earlier, if the invoice is not raised within the timeline. Okay, now both of these, guys, both of these conditions, the receipt of payment condition, are subject to one small limit. What is that limit? If the advance is received up to rupees 1000, please see this limit. This limit is very, very important. If the advance is received up to rupees 1000, then time of supply will be date of payment or date of issue of next invoice. Date of payment or date of issue of next invoice. Now, someone please tell me what is the underlying reason why we do this. What is the underlying reason? So the up to rupees 1000, the time of supply will be date of payment or date of issue of next invoice. Up to rupees 1000, if advance is given, then this benefit is given. That time of supply can be considered as the date of issue of next invoice also, because we don't want very small advances to be chargeable to GST. That is the reason why we are pushing the TOS date to the next invoice when the invoice will be raised. And if the advances are more than 1000, then TOS is the date of payment. Then you have to mandatorily in case of services, you have to mandatorily pay GST on the advances if they are beyond rupees 1000. Very, very important concept. It was discussed in detail, in the class. Small amount means up to rupees 1000, and a large amount means beyond rupees 1000. Okay, sir. Now, what is the proviso to section 13.2? TOS is not determinable. If TOS is not determinable under section 13.2, then guys, what will be take as time of supply? It will be taken as book entry in the books of the recipient. Again, same thing, guys. Sometimes to avoid GST or to defer GST, the assessees or the recipients or the suppliers, they both do not exchange the invoices. They do not exchange the payments. They try to defer the payment. In that case, guys, if a book entry has been made in the books of the recipient, that will be considered as time of supply. If all these sections are not applicable, then that can be taken as the relevant factor. All right, now coming on to reverse charge mechanism. What if the services are given on the basis of reverse charge mechanism, which means the recipient is liable to pay taxes in case of reverse charge mechanism? Okay, services are granted and they are taxable on reverse charge basis. Okay, again, guys, the earlier of the two dates will be considered as the time of supply. Number one, 61st day from the date of issue of invoice of the supplier, or the date of payment, whichever is earlier. The 61st day of date of issue of invoice or date of payment, whichever is earlier, that is the demarcating factor. That is the factor which we'll consider in case of RCM. Now, guys, please remember 30 days of grace period which is given to the recipient plus 31st day, because in case of services, we already give 31 days for the tax invoice. That is why this figure of 61 comes into picture. Very, very important. Why does this 61 comes into picture? The reason is 30 days which is given to the recipient of services plus 30 extra days which is given in case of RCM. That is why 61st day. Okay, then date of payment, whichever is earlier, is to be taken as the time of supply in case of services. Proviso to section 13.3, if TDS is not determinable under the aforesaid section, then the time of supply will be date of book entry in the books of the recipient. Whenever the recipient has created a provision, okay, at that point in time, we will consider that time of supply has taken place and GST is leviable. So that is the proviso. Okay, then proviso 2. Proviso 2 says, guys, this is specifically in case of associated enterprises, which means group companies which are located outside India. So if supplier of service is an associate entity which is located outside India, then again, guys, the TOS will be the date of book entry or the date of payment, whichever is earlier. So if the service provider is an associate enterprise which is located outside India and the services are being rendered to an entity which is inside India, in that case also the TOS will be date of book entry and date of payment, whichever is earlier. Guys, in our class, we had studied this in great detail, and yes, examples and all the details were shared in the class. So please recapitulate all the discussions which you had discussed with me during the class, because it's not only important to mug the section, but also to understand the section well. The reasoning should be very, very, very clear in your mind. Kavya Verma says it's 61. No, so it's 60 days. So I'm saying 61st day will be the final day. Okay. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. What is the time of supply in case of voucher? So if services are given by way of a voucher and the voucher will be redeemed by way of services and not goods, guys, the principle remains the same. If the supply is identifiable, then date of issue of voucher will be the date of supply. If the supply is not identifiable, then date of redemption of voucher will be the date of supply. That is the demarcating criteria. Then residual cases. In the residual cases, the defaulters are there, and defaulters would mean that people who have not maintained invoices, they have not exchanged money by way of bank or NEFT or anything of that sort. They have exchanged cash and they have deleted all the traces of the transaction. If they deleted all the traces of the transaction, then guys, in that case, the residual section will be applicable, which is section 13.5. When periodical return is to be filed, when the person is a registered person and he's supposed to file the periodical return, then the time of supply will be periodical return. If it is not to be filed, then date of payment of taxes will be the relevant time of supply. Okay. Again, in case of fee of late payment for consideration, the date when the amount is received by the supplier, that will be the time of supply. Same, absolutely the same provisions which we had studied in our goods section, guys. Okay. Nothing is different. It's absolutely the same. And very, very important section, guys. Change in rate. Okay. If the rate changes, if the tax rate changes, then what will be the time of supply in that case? If tax rate changes and some transactions have happened before that, some transactions have happened after that, what will be the relevant way to ascertain what rate should be applied in this particular transaction? Very, very important section from an exam standpoint. Section 14, very, very important. Please mark it as very, very important section. Section 14 of the CGST Act. All right. So, guys, if there is a change in rate of tax and partly the transaction has been done before the change of rate, partly the transaction has been done after the rate of change, partly the transaction has been done. Guys, in this particular case, we have certain permutation and combinations which crop up. Okay. The permutation and combinations are: the supply happens after the rate change, invoice happens after the rate change, payment happens after the rate change, and which rate rate is to be taken? Which rate is to be taken? Rate is to be taken as the post change rate, and time of supply is to be ascertained as per section 12 and section 13. What if the supply is done before, invoice is done before the rate change, payment is done before the rate change, which rate should we take? We should take the rate which is prior rate, and section 12-13 will be there. So these two are very obvious sections which are there. Now comes the difficult or different sections. Let's see what are those sections. Okay. Now what happens if the supply happens before the rate change, invoice is also raised before the rate change, but the payment is done after the rate change? Then, guys, rate which is to be applied should be before the rate change, and the time of supply will be the date of invoice. I means invoice. I means invoice. Okay. Then what happens is, if supply happens before the rate change, invoice happens after the rate change, payment happens after the rate change, then the rate which is afterwards, which is the after rate change rate, that should be applied. And what will be the time of supply? It will be invoice or payment, whichever is earlier. So the fundamental which we are following is majority wins. If majority is in favor of after, then that will win. If majority is in favor of before, then that will win. That is the fundamental which you are following over here. Whatever is majority, that will win. And yes, these are the time of supply which are to be taken: invoice date, payment date, invoice date, payment date, so on and so forth. Now, this table is absolutely very, very relevant and important for your examination, that if a rate changes, rate of tax changes, then what will be the desired rate. Proviso to section 14 says that the date of receipt of payment should be, if the credit is in bank is done within 4 days of date of change in rate. Now, guys, some people do very smart things. Okay. Smart things are, they would issue a check, but they would not materialize it. They would not, realize it. They will issue the check just to show that payment has been done. They will issue the check, but they will not realize it. They will not, take steps to put it in the bank and realize the payment. And that is the problem. So if the check is credited within 4 days of the date in change in rate, then earlier of date of entry in the books of accounts or date of credit in bank, whichever is earlier, is the due date of time of supply. Okay. But in case if credit is beyond 4 days, which means you issued the check, but the check was not presented in the bank. If it is beyond 4 days of date of change rate, then date of credit in bank will be taken as the time of supply. Date of receipt of payment will be taken as the date of credit of bank. Now, many people do this kind of hanky panky stuff. They would, just to prove that the payment is before the rate change, just to prove that the payment is before the rate change, they would issue the check, but they will not realize it. They will not put it inside the bank. And that is the problem because of which this proviso has been inserted, which defines the date of receipt of payment very well. Yes. So Zainab says, I still remember your example. उस स्टूडेंट को 10 बार रोक दिया था आपने, जिससे आप हायर रेट वाले पीरियड में ना फॉलो हो. Yes, absolutely. But वो रुका नहीं था. So when should we count these 4 days? On the date of change in rate or after the change in rate? We should count this 4 days from the date of change in rate. When the rate has changed, from that date, 1, 2, 3, 4. Next 4 days should be counted from the date of change of rate. Okay, guys. So yes, this was section number 14 for all of you. Section number 14. And yes, hereby we finish our sections on the time of supply. So a very small topic, guys, a very, very small topic. It's not a very lengthy topic, but yes, very, very important from an exam standpoint, because value of supply and time of supply in either of the two chapters, in either of the two concepts, at least one will come in the examination for sure, practically or theoretically. Either ways, at least one will come in the examination. So very, very important from an exam standpoint. Okay, let's start the next chapter now. And yes, one of the most favorite chapters of yours and one of the most interesting chapters of the GST, which is exemptions. And yes, very, very important. So guys, this chapter is not a separate chapter in your study module of CM Institute. I have deliberately extracted it from the chapter and made it a separate chapter because of its importance, because of its length, and because of the detailed discussion which we have to do in this particular chapter. It's not a separate chapter. It's just a part of one of the chapters of your GST, but I have deliberately culled it out, separated it from the main chapter so that I can give it the due importance which this chapter deserves. It's a very, very important chapter and it deserves a lot of attention, lot of importance from an exam standpoint and also from your practical understanding standpoint. What are the exemptions? So guys, what do you mean by exemption? Exemption means the goods or services on which GST is not leviable. So yes, Government of India follows some social objectives, and for following those social objectives, it has exempted certain goods from the category of GST in public favor, in public welfare, in benefit of the public. They have excluded certain goods and services from the purview of GST, and that is known as exemptions from goods and services. So what is this chapter? This chapter is the chapter which contains the list of goods and list of services on which GST is not applicable. Exemptions from GST. Let's start the chapter exemptions from GST. Before we start the chapter exemptions from GST, it is very, very important for you to understand what are the types of supplies. What are the supplies which are there? What are their types which are there in the GST Act? Let's study the types of supply first. Okay, so there are two kinds of supply. One is taxable supplies. Other one is non-taxable supplies. Taxable supplies are the supplies on which GST is leviable, and non-taxable supplies are the supplies on which GST is absolutely, it's outside the purview of GST. Okay. Now, non-taxable supplies means that supplies on which GST Act is not applicable altogether. Neither yesterday, nor today, nor in future will GST be ever applicable on these kind of goods. These are the non-taxable goods. On these goods, the GST will not be applicable. It wasn't applicable in past, it is not applicable in present, and won't be applicable in future as well. All three windows are closed for these goods to be taxable under GST. So these goods are not taxable goods. They will never ever be included under purview of GST. These are non-taxable goods. What are these goods? These are alcohol for human consumption and 5 kinds of petroleum products. Alcohol for human consumption and 5 kinds of petroleum products. These are not covered under the realms of GST. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever in future. So why? Because these are state subjects. States have monopoly over these goods. Therefore, these are monopolized. The tax regime will be followed by the state, will be determined by the state. Therefore, these are out of purview of GST. Now, coming on to taxable goods. So, guys, in case of taxable goods and services, these are the goods which either are taxable today or they are not taxable today, but they can be taxable in the future. Okay, they are under the realms of GST Act. They are under the purview of GST Act, but the difference is that as of today, they are not taxable. That is the only difference that they have. Okay, as of now, they might or might not be taxable. So, taxable goods can be bifurcated into 4 parts: chargeable goods, exempt supplies, nil rate supply, and zero rate supply. Now, what do you mean by chargeable supply? Chargeable supply means the supply of goods and services on which GST is payable, and you are aware about what is the GST rate on these kind of goods. So these are the chargeable supply. Yes, alcohol other than human consumption, which is spirit, is taxable under GST. Okay, so chargeable supplies, GST is applicable on these supplies. Now, secondly, there are exempt supplies. What are exempt supplies? Exempt supplies are that these supplies are temporarily exempt in public interest from taxes, but in future they might get covered under the GST realms. What is a nil rate supply? Nil rate supply means GST rate as of now on these goods are 0. Okay, GST is leviable, but the rate is 0. But in future, the rate can be anything. Okay, in case of exempt supply, it's not that the rate is 0. It is that the goods are outside purview of GST. They are exempt. So there's slight difference. The effect is the same, but there's slight difference between meaning of nil rate supply and exempt supply. And last but not all the least, the zero rated supply. This is the Damaji in-house. Okay, these are the special people who get a lot of special attention. They get a lot of special advantages as compared to other goods because these are zero rated supply. These are export incentives. On them, ITC is also available, and on them the exemption is also there. So they are Damaji of the house. These are the son-in-laws of the house. They are given huge respect. They are given huge incentives. They are given huge benefits which are not given by any other supply. So these are the zero rated supplies. So in the definition of exempt supplies, if I ask you what is the definition of exempt supply, it will contain 3 things: the not taxable goods, the nil rate supplies, and the exempt supplies. All these are categorized as exempt supplies. Today's chapter is exclusively dedicated on these exempt supplies. Supplies which are outside purview of GST, supplies which are on which GST is not applicable. Today's lecture is entirely based on this particular supply. Okay, sir. दामाद जी अंगना में पधारे, दामाद जी लगते सबको प्यारे. Okay, let's start the chapter of exemptions. Yes, exempt supplies. Let's start the chapter of exempt supplies. And guys, there are exempt supply of goods also, which are not that important from an exam standpoint. Okay, but I'll be discussing only the exempt services in this particular marathon. I will not be going into the goods because goods are not that important, but you have to read the goods by your own from the study mat of the CMA Institute. All right. So exemptions, first of all, are of 2 types: general exemptions, specific exemptions. General exemptions are given to everyone who's producing that particular product. So suppose if exemption is there on, say, agricultural produce, so everyone who's producing agricultural produce, that person will be exempt from GST. These are known as general exemptions. However, there are certain specific exemptions also. For example, Bright Vision Academy, one of the best academies in the country for providing affordable coaching for the CMA students. They charge such less profits. They have such less profits that, for buying these digital boards for the academy, they had to approach the government and claim for some exemption from GST so that their cost of purchase of these boards are reduced. Government agreed. Government said, yes, you deserve an exemption. If you deserve an exemption, then please go ahead and don't pay GST on your digital boards which you can purchase. So guys, this exemption is a specific exemption which is given to a particular organization. It is not given to all the people who are producing or who are buying this digital board for them. It is given only and only to specific organizations, and therefore these are known as specific exemptions. So specific exemptions, these are given by a special order. These are applied to only specified persons who are mentioned in the order. They are granted in public interest on an exceptional basis. They may be whole or partly, they may be whole or part, they may be absolute or conditional. Now, it is granted by way of notification. These are generic. These are applicable to all persons, granted by way of a notification. They are granted in general public interest, and they may be wholly or partly, and they may have conditions. They might not have conditions. Both the situations are there. Now, who can grant exemptions? Who has the power to grant exemptions? Guys, the power to grant exemption is with the GST Council. Explanation clarification may be granted by the government on exemptions within 1 year from issue of notifications or the order. Any kind of clarification if government wants to give, it can give within a period of 1 year of the notification. But the notification, the exemption notification, is to be given only and only by the council of the GST. So let's start our first exempt service. Our first exempt service is charitable and religious activities. And guys, your CMA study mat also has followed the same pattern. I will also follow the same pattern, that all the services which belong to one sector are being clubbed and taught to you together. Let me repeat. All the services, all the exempt services belonging to a particular sector will be clubbed together and will be taught to you together. Okay. This is the approach which has been taken by the CMA Institute in its study mat, and same approach I will be taking in the class as well. All right. All right. So, charitable and religious activities. If you are doing some charitable and religious activities, then there are certain exemptions which are applicable to you. And what are those exemptions which are applicable to you? Charitable and religious activities. So, who is eligible to claim exemption for these activities? Only organizations which are registered under 12A or 12AB under the Income Tax Act. Guys, under the direct taxation, we have studied that the organizations which are charitable or religious, they are in the nature of trust. They are actually the organizations which are eligible for this particular exemption. So if you want this exemption from GST, then you have to have a certificate or a approval or a grant from the relevant authorities under section 12A or 12AB of the Income Tax Act. Now, what are the activities which are exempt? Not all activities of these trusts are exempt. Not all activities are exempt, but the specified activities are exempt. Only specified activities are exempt. So, what are the activities which are exempt? Number one, public health. If the charitable institution is investing in public health, they are having some hospital, they are having some clinic with which they are providing some rehabilitation, therapy, counseling, they're providing medical treatment, etc., etc., then guys, that particular service is exempt from GST. Secondly, advancement of religious or spirituality or yoga. So if you are into any specific activity of promoting religion or promoting spirituality or promoting yoga, then your services are exempt from GST. Advancement of education, skill development. So if you are contributing to education and skill development of poor people, then guys, you will be eligible for this particular activity. But please note that the advancement of education and skill development should only be done with respect to abandoned, traumatized prisoners, age above 65 years, living in rural areas. Only people who are abandoned, like abandoned children, right? Traumatized, who have faced some difficult situations at their home, traumatized people, or prisoners, okay, or old age people with the age bracket over the age bracket of 65 years, living in rural areas. Only these people, education and skill development is eligible to get the exemption under this particular section. Very, very important point to be noted over here. Very, very important point to be noted over. Yes, we also fall under this particular category because we are a charitable trust. We don't work for profit. We work for charity. We work for welfare of CMA students. Absolutely correct. So my competitor has my fake name holder has identified it. Absolutely correct. Then preservation of environment. If you are dealing with any activity which is related to preservation of environment, and of course you have to be registered under section 12AA and AB. That is a prerequisite. Okay. And if you are dealing with preservation of environment, if you are into activities of preservation of environment, then guys, your services will be exempt from GST. Then old age home. If you are maintaining an old age home, The fees of the old age home should be less than or equal to 25,000 per person per month. In that case, guys, your activities will be exempt. Renting of the persings. Persings means the premises. So if you have a temple and you have a religious place, or you have a charitable place, and in that periphery, in that space, in that area, there are some rooms which you give on rent, like dharmshala, or like mandirs. The temples have certain attachments to them, certain rooms, certain guest house to them, which they give on rent. Okay. In this case, guys, in this case, your renting activity is free from GST. GST is not applicable in case your rooms are rented. But there are certain exceptions. There are certain exceptions. Exceptions are room rent above rupees 1,000 per day is not eligible for exemption. Okay. Shop rent above rupees 10,000 per month, not eligible for exemption. And if you have any hall rent, open area, which has rent of more than 10,000 per day, exemption is not there. So exemption is only there where you have smaller rooms, rooms which are lower than 1,000 per day rent, shop rent which is less than 10,000 per month, and hall rents which are less than 10,000 per month. Only they have exemption from GST. Otherwise, exemption from GST is not there. Then, if you are providing services with respect to religious pilgrimage, what is a pilgrimage? Pilgrimage means a religious travel, a religious journey involving two countries. Okay, like from India, people go to Kailash Mansarovar, which is in China, for visiting the Shiv temple. Okay. Similarly, people go to Hajj to Makkah Medina for having the religious pilgrimage. So there is a bilateral treaty, there's a bilateral agreement between two governments which facilitate the visitors from one country to another country for visiting these places. Guys, in this particular religious pilgrimage, the activities are exempt from GST. Now, please note that only the activities which are cross country, cross border are exempt. If both the places where the person is visiting and where he is starting from is in India only. So for example, if I go to say Jagannath Puri, which is in Odisha, I stay in Delhi, I go to Jagannath Puri, which is in Odisha, it is also supposedly a religious pilgrimage. But will it be covered over here? Answer is no. Only the religious pilgrimage which are involving bilateral agreements which are in between two countries, only those are eligible to be exempt. Those activities are eligible to be exempt. Okay. Then religious ceremony, birth, marriage, death, etc. So if you have religious ceremonies like birth, marriage, death, etc., and during these religious ceremonies, you perform some activities, some rituals, then guys, in that case also your GST is exempt. Even the pandits which are there, people who conduct the religious ceremonies, like priests are there, if they charge something on the occasion of birth, death, marriage, or birth of a child, or anything of that sort, mahurat of your home, then guys, that will be exempt from GST. Okay, these are the charitable and religious activities which are there. Charitable and religious activities which are exempt from GST. Charitable and religious activities which are exempt from GST. Now, coming on to the next activity which is exempt from GST, again, very, very important activity, agricultural related sector. So guys, the agriculture sector is, hugely benefited. Government has got a very soft corner for this agriculture related sector because, of course, farmers are the key to this nation, and farmers have contributed a lot to development of this nation. So obviously, the services provided by the farmers will definitely be benefited, and GST will not be applicable on agriculture related activities. Okay. Okay, sir. Entry number 60 of religious yatra is not exempt. No. Religious yatra means outside India, not inside India. Okay. Religious yatra means outside India. Religious birthday party. What is religious birthday party? Religious birthday party. There's nothing called religious birthday party. Okay, coming on to the next service. Next service is agriculture related services. So guys, whatever agriculture related services will be granted, those are exempt from GST. The primary purpose is that we cannot afford to levy GST on the agriculture related services, because that will increase the cost or price of the agricultural goods, and that will be not good for the economy. The economy will be at a loss in case the price of the agricultural goods are increased. Therefore, this particular sector is key focus of the entire government. Okay, now applicability is supply of services for agricultural produce. So whatever supply of services is given, now please note that this particular exemption is on the people who are giving service to the farmers. People who are giving service to the farmers. So please read this. Supply of services for agricultural produce. So for example, farmer needs some service of cultivation. Some third party give that that service to the farmer, then that will be exempt from taxation. So supply of service for agricultural produce, that is the applicability of this particular section. And please note, not processed goods. Okay, not processed goods, only the agricultural produce, which is the basic raw material, the raw goods which are purchased. If you're processing the goods, exemption is not applicable on you. No, not applicable. Okay. Okay. So what do you mean by agriculture produce? It means that you are cultivating some plant, cultivation of plant, or you are rearing some animal. But that animal should not be horse. Horse is not a valid animal. Okay. He's a valid animal. Horse is a valid animal, but rearing of horse is not eligible for exemption. Because guys, rearing of horses is a luxury luxury hobby which very rich people pursue. So this cannot be exempted. So we have not exempted the activities related to horse. For any other animal, we have exempted the activities. Now we are rearing animal or we are cultivating plant for food, fiber, fuel, raw material, etc. For any purpose, we can do these two activities. Now, what are the activities which are involved over here? What are the activities which are exempt in case of agricultural related activities? They are cultivation, harvesting, threshing, protection, testing. That is the basic operations. The basic operations, the generic operations which are there, we are talking about those operations which are cultivation, harvesting, threshing, protection, testing. Supply of farm labor. If someone is supplying labor, the unskilled labor to the farms, then that labor is also, that service is also exempt from GST. Tending, pruning, cutting, drying, cleaning, fumigation, sorting, grading, bulk packaging. All these are activities which are useful for marketing the goods, making the goods marketable. But one very important element is there: they should not alter the essential character of the good. The essential character of the good should not be changed in this particular case. Okay. Okay, so tending, pruning, cutting, drying, all these activities are basic operations which are required to make the goods marketable, and therefore these activities are exempt if they are provided to a farmer, if they are provided to an agriculturist. Then renting, leasing, agro machinery or vacant land. If the farmer is taking that particular land on rent from someone, or it is taking some machinery like tractor from someone on rent, that is also exempt from GST for benefit of the farmer. Loading, unloading, packing, storage, warehouse of these goods, it is exempt from GST. Farmer training, education, application of scientific research, these are also exempt from GST. Then guys, very, very important, Artiya, who's the commission agent for sale and purchase of agriculture produce, these are exempt from GST. Artiya, who's helping the farmer to sell their produce in the mandis, these are known as Artiya. And in case of Artiya, GST is exempt. GST is not applicable. Intermediate production process, that is job work. If job work is being done on behalf of the farmer, so for example, farmer may want to get some basic processing done of a particular grain, then that job work is also exempt from GST. But please note that processing should not change the basic character of that particular good. Preconditioning, pre-cooling, ripening, waxing, retail packing, labeling of fruit, vegetable, all these are not covered under the realms of GST, exempt from GST. Artificial insemination, when you are artificially inseminating livestock to produce more livestock other than horse, then that will also be covered under the definition of exempt services, agriculture services which are exempt. Very, very, very important. Yes, stud farm is not exempt because it is for horses. Perfect. Now, guys, a distinguishing factor, okay? A distinguishing factor of what is agriculture produce and what is not agriculture produce. Because only the services which are related to agriculture produce are exempt. Other services are not exempt. So what is agriculture produce and what is not agriculture produce? So green tea leaves is agriculture produce. And when we actually make tea from these leaves, then they are non-agriculture produce. Paddy, agriculture produce. Rice, non-agriculture produce. Sugarcane, agriculture produce. Jaggery, sugar, non-agriculture produce. Coffee beans, agriculture produce. Coffee, non-agriculture produce. Unmanufactured tobacco leaves, agriculture produce. Non-agriculture produce, processed tobacco. Betel leaves, agriculture produce. Pan, non-agriculture produce. This is the way you need to distinguish between agriculture produce and non-agriculture produce, because only the services which are provided in respect to agriculture produce, they are eligible for exemption. That is very, very, very important point. Mostly raw is exempt. Very good answer. Mostly raw is exempt. Then one very important thing, wheat is an agriculture produce. Wheat is also always considered as an agriculture produce. Please note this point very, very carefully. Okay. Now, storage warehouse of some non-agriculture produce is also exempt. Guys, in certain cases, storage and warehouse of non-agriculture produce is also exempt. What are those non-agriculture produce in case of which storage and warehouse is exempt? Cereals, pulses, spices, coffee, tea, jaggery, copra, rice. For them, even when they are non-agriculture produce, even then storage and warehouse is exempt. In case, specifically in case of rice, loading and unloading, packing services are also exempt along with the storage and warehouse services. So big benefit which is given to rice, big benefit which is given to wheat. Okay, both of them are very, very beneficial produce to make, because no GST is applicable on the services which are received with respect to them. All right, sir, got it. Now let's move on to the next very, 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 very important provision, which is the healthcare sector. And yes, from an exam standpoint, this sector is one of the most important sectors that you should remember and you should do. Very, very important. Please mark it as very, very important sector, which is the healthcare sector. And guys, in this lecture also, I'll be dealing with all the major sectors. Okay, I cannot cover all the services. Please excuse me for that. It is impossible to cover all the services, but I will cover all the important services with all of you in this particular marathon lectures. Doesn't mean that you don't have to study the rest of the services. You have to study all the services in detail very, very, very well. Yes, sir. Rice ke liye kyun mila loading unloading? Sai Luthra is asking. Because rice is a staple food of the country, and rice is just like wheat. Wheat is considered as agriculture produce. However, it is not an agriculture produce, typically saying, right? So a lot of benefit given to wheat, and then a lot of benefit given to rice, because it is the staple food of the country. It is, the basic necessity of the country. That is why special benefit being given to rice and wheat. Yes, commission for wheat is exempt. Absolutely. राइस बहुत जरूरी है साई, स्टमक भर पाएगा तेरा राइस खाए बिना. These guys go crazy over certain things and they give some crazy stupid comments which I read and then I don't understand what to answer. And this is the person who's using my fake name, and this person claims that this person can teach GST. Okay, nonetheless, let's move on to the healthcare sector. Again, guys, right? Very, very, very important from an exam standpoint, and very, very, very important from your study standpoint also. Healthcare sector, which means hospitals, clinics, any kind of paramedic, treatments, any kind of labs, testing equipments, testing kits, all those sector which is related to healthcare, that is covered over here. And a very, very typical sector, very, very important sector, and really important from an exam standpoint. But before that, guys, I'm feeling really, really, lack of energy. I'm gaining lack of energy. Can you give me something to regain my energy? I'm feeling very, very dizzy. I'm not feeling well because my energies are low. I've been standing for last 1 hour and shouting. My energies are low. Can you give me some energy drink so that my energies are boosted up? Please give me some energy drink, huh? Yes, Uday Sahu has given me energy drink. Manvi says Rajma Chawal khao. So Manvi, you're going to give me Rajma Chawal, huh? Yes, Kirti Varta, thank you for the thumbs up. Guys, please hit a like button on the stream. If you're liking the stream, please hit a like button. And in the comment section also, please hit a like. Yes, yes, that is my energy. Hydrate, hydrate. Okay. Operation. Zainab has given me a lot of pills and some blood and some syringes and some knives. I know what are her intentions. Her intentions are not right. Mohit Mudgul has given me some bomb and I don't know, pomegranate. Okay. Kirti Batra, Kavya Verma has given me apples, strawberries, and cherry. Kavya Verma is the most good student of our live because she's very good, very good. Sakshi has given me some adult things like wine, beer, or something like that. I don't drink. No. Mohit Mudgal has given me milk in the small bottles which are given to the kids. Okay, guys, enough of energy now. Yes, I am energetic. You guys tell me, how's the Josh, guys, in the chat box? Is the Josh at the top of the ceiling? Is the Josh absolutely high? Are you really interested in this chapter called exemptions, which will be one of the most important chapters of your syllabus? And yes, a practical question will definitely come from this particular exemptions chapter. So please tell me, how's the Josh, guys? How's the Josh? Yes, very high, says Sailuthra. Uday says, very high. Kavya says, sir is very sanskari. That's why he can't take your drinks. Hi, sir. Hi. Yes, it's very high. Absolutely, guys. Josh is like, Josh is high. No, my income is not as high as my Josh is. My Josh is higher than my income. Yes, the Josh is high. We are going to complete the entire chapter of exemption today. Oh wow, Midhun Manoj is also there. How are you, Midhun? Nice to see you today. Mantri says very high. Mohit says low. Why, Mohit? Why is it low? Mantri says yes. All right. So guys, let's start the healthcare sector. Need some energetic motivation. Studying is an energetic motivation. If you just study well, if you study to the best of your abilities, and if you perform well, that's the best motivation that you can give to yourself. And it's like an addiction. You complete one of the part of your syllabus on day 1. Day 2, you'll automatically be driven to the next part. Automatically you feel कि कल इतना बढ़िया पढ़ा था ना भाई, आज भी और बढ़िया पढ़ते हैं. So automatically this motivation will come. Okay. High as Everest, sir. Very good. Superb. All right. Now let's start the healthcare sector. And please note that healthcare sector deals with humans, elements, and birds both. Human, animals, and birds. All three of them are included in the healthcare sector. And whatever healthcare is given to humans, animals, and birds, they are included in this particular category. So what do we deal with? What is the applicability? Applicability is healthcare services provided by clinic or establishment. Establishment means obviously hospitals, authorized medical practitioners, which means private clinics of doctors, and paramedic staff. Paramedic staff are staff like ambulance staff and the staff which give support like physiotherapy staff, ambulance staff, testing team. They are the paramedic. So if any services are provided by three of them to any of the patients, then these are exempt from GST. GST is not applicable on these services. So it includes, what does it include? It includes DTC. The abbreviation is DTC. Diagnosis, treatment, and care of illness in any recognized system of medicine, including ambulance services. So three things are involved in healthcare services. One, diagnosis of the disease. So if someone only diagnoses the disease, for example, a lab only diagnoses the disease. Treatment is given by the doctors, okay. And care, post surgery or post operation care is also included over here. So DTC is included in the healthcare services, which is exempt from GST. DTC is a short form to remember what are the services which are involved. Now the illness, it includes pregnancy and deformity also. Illness includes pregnancy and deformity also. Ambulance services are also included in this particular sector, guys. Ambulance services are included. Then preservation of stem cell. Stem cell is being preserved by cord blood bank. That is also included in these activities. Rehabilitation, therapy, counseling. So people who drink a lot, people who are addicted to addictive substances, those require rehabilitation. That is also included in this particular category. Now it excludes what are the things which are not included in the healthcare sector, which is exempt. So these are taxable healthcare services. These are taxable healthcare services. Exclusions are yes, clinic को exemption मिलेगा बिल्कुल. Clinic is included over here and here also. Okay. Exclusions are hair transplant. If you are getting a hair transplant done, it will not be exempt from GST. Plastic surgery, these are done for beauty treatments, then they are not exempt from GST. Renting of shop, auditorium, display of advertisement, etc. inside a hospital. If inside the hospital you are renting shops and you are selling patties and samosas over there, then you are not exempt from GST. Auditorium services, display of advertisements, etc. All these things are not exempt from GST. Then aura cleansing, these are some specialized techniques. आपकी मम्मी नजर उतारती होंगी ना, आपकी नजर उतारती होंगी, उसको बड़े मॉडर्न वर्ड में, बड़े मॉडर्न लाइफस्टाइल में फॉरेन कंट्रीज में पता है क्या बोला जाता है? ऑरा क्लेंजिंग. ऑरा क्लेंजिंग ये क्या है? वो नजर उतारना जो हमारी मम्मी नजर उतारती है, वो ये ऑरा क्लेंजिंग. सो ऑरा क्लेंजिंग अगर कोई करता है, इट इज नॉट exempt from GST. Crystal therapy. Crystals are small beads which are there to improve certain health parameters. Crystal therapy. Reiki, acupressure, vastu, these are not included in healthcare services. They are not exempt from this particular category. Okay, so this is very, very important sector, guys, healthcare sector, and you need to actually learn all of these sector specific services which are not eligible for GST. Got it, sir? So this was the healthcare sector. Now coming on to the next sector, and yes, my sector, guys, education sector. Unfortunately, I am not exempt from GST. I wish I was exempt from GST. It would have been really great. But no, I'm not exempt from GST. But the recognized schools, colleges, educational institutions are exempt from GST for providing services to the students, to the staff, and the entire society. Well, let's start education services. Please mark very, very, very important on this particular service as well. Very, 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 very important. So there are many x-rays in the hospital. Will those x-rays be exempt outside of hospital? No, x-rays are not exempt. They are covered under the lab and testing stuff and that, and all of them are exempt from GST. Labs, testing labs, x-ray, diagnosis, this is covered under diagnosis. They will be exempt, whether they are inside the hospital or whether they are outside the hospital, they'll be exempt. प्राइवेट ट्यूशन एक्सक्लूडेड है. हाँ अनुराज, यही तो दुख की बात है, प्राइवेट ट्यूशन एक्सक्लूडेड है. काश प्राइवेट ट्यूशन इस वाले सर्विस में इंक्लूड होता. तो आप जो मुझे फीस देते हो, वैसे तो मैं फीस ही कोई खास नहीं लेता, बहुत कम फीस लेता हूँ ना भाई, हम तो चैरिटेबल ऑर्गेनाइजेशन है, तो जो आप फीस लेते हो उस पर GST पे अप्लाई नहीं करना पड़ता. यस, ओके, सो लेट्स स्टार्ट एजुकेशन सर्विसेज. Education services are provided, there are two kinds of education services. Education services which are provided by an education institute, or the education services which are provided to an educational institute. Both of them are exempt subject to certain limits. Number one, education services provided by an education institute which is primarily to the students. Okay, and the education services which are provided to an education institute by, say, the bus owners, okay, who are providing bus for traveling of the students, or the people who are providing food in the canteen, who are running canteen inside the schools. They are the people who are providing services to the education institute. So two categories of services which I will cover over here: services provided by an education institute, services provided to an education institute, which are exempt from GST. Let's start education services. First of all, the services provided by an education institute to the students, faculty, or its staff members are exempt from GST. Totally exempt from GST, including the conduct of entrance exam for entrance fees, even when not provided to the students of the institute. So, entrance exam is conducted in some of the institutes. Even that entrance exam is, free from GST. That entrance exam is, the fees which is charged in that entrance exam, that is free from GST. So all the services, guys, please note, all the services which are provided by an education institute to students, faculty or staff, they're exempt from GST. All the services, okay? All of them. Okay, sir. Sai says, ab ki baar exemption par. Very good. Sai, that's the spirit. Amazing. Amazing. An educational institute provided by education institute to its start staff is exempted. Yes, to its staff or students. Okay. Now coming on to the services which are provided to an education institute. So if you are a service provider and you are providing services to an education institute, you are providing some services like transportation services to the school or college, catering services, security services. Then what is the applicability of GST? Let us study. So if you are providing services to school, then transportation, catering, security cleaning, admission or conduct of examination, these are exempt. These are exempt. If you're providing services to a college, then online educational journal, periodical, admission or conduct of examination, these are exempt. If you're providing to any other education institute like a vocational course school or an education institute or a national university or some preschool, then guys, admission or conduct of examination is only exempt. So these are three categories and you need to remember which services are exempt under which category. It is not that all the services are exempt under all category. Only the specified services are exempt from each of the categories. That is very, very important, which you need to actually remember. Okay. So these are the services which are exempt from GST under the educational services section. Okay, sir, got it. And yes, guys, very, very, very important. Passenger transport services. Passenger transport services. Passenger transport services, which of them are exempt, which of them are taxable? This is the next topic under consideration. Yes, after that, obviously, we'll do goods transport services. There are two kinds of transport services, goods transport services and passenger transport services. First, we'll study the passenger transport services, which means your duty or your function is to transfer passengers from one location to another location. Okay, this is passenger transport. Okay, so passenger transport includes air transport, rail transport, water transport, road transport. These are the four means of transportation in case of transportation of passengers. Okay, in case of air transport, if the flight is from or to a northeastern state means all the states like Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Manipur, Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland, Sikkim, Tripura, and Bagdogra. Bagdogra is not a state; it's a airport which is in West Bengal. Okay, Bagdogra, but it's near the northeastern states. Okay, now if the flight is from or to these North Indian states, then it is exempt from GST. The air tickets are exempt from GST. No GST is leviable on the air tickets which are pertaining to the flights which are either landing in these states or they are taking off from these states, irrespective of where they are coming from or irrespective of where they are going to. These are exempt from GST. In any other case, in any other flights, they are taxable under the GST. Okay. So from or to northeastern states, exempt. Any other state, taxable. Okay. This is not very, very important. So let's leave it. In case of railways, guys, okay, you're traveling by rail, obviously Indian Railways. Now, Indian Railways, if you're traveling by rail, if you're traveling by AC coach or first class coach, then it is taxable under the GST regime. In case you are traveling from any other coach, it is exempt from GST. Then in case of metro, monorail, tram rail, okay, it is exempt from GST. Metro, monorail, tram rail, exempt from GST. Guys, you need to remember these things because these things are very, very important. Okay. And yes, if you make these charts on a piece of paper and put them on your wall, that will be etched in your mind and you will never be able to forget it. You will even remember the examples which I gave you in the class. What if we are having a connecting flight from Assam? So guys, the connecting flight means you will not land in Assam. You will not go outside in Assam. Okay. That means the flight is connecting, which means it is not ending in Assam. So the exemption will not be there. Exemption will not be there. Okay. Okay, sir. Then we have covered the railways. Now we cover the waterways. Guys, in case of waterways, there are two kinds of waterways. Inland waterways. Inland waterways means the waterways which are run in a river, lake, or canal, which means, you know, a river is flowing between the two land areas. Lake is there where it is surrounded by land. Canal is also the same thing. Inland waterways. Inland waterways means they are within a particular land area. Then they are exempt from GST. If the waterways is a vessel which is pertaining to sea or ocean, in that case, in that respect, if it is meant for tourism, then it is taxable. If it is meant for public transport in India, then it is exempt. So, you know, sometimes, you know, sea or ocean vessels are used as a public transport. Like within Maharashtra, if you want to go from one place to another place, there can be a vessel that can drop you through ocean route. Okay, that is if it is if it is for public transport, then it is exempt. And if it is used as tourism, then it will be taxable. Now, coming on to road or buses, this is very, very typical and very, very important also. Please see this very, very carefully. Okay, in case of buses, so in case of buses, buses can be of two types. Okay, road, and we are referring to buses. Number one, stage carriage. Number two, contract carriage. Stage carriage means where these buses have a fixed route, and you ply on these buses and they will drop you to another route. These are stage carriage. These have fixed routes. Okay, contract carriage are the carriage which do not have any fixed route. You hire them, you make them go wherever you want to go, and you can drop them back. These are known as contract carriage. So in case of stage carriage, which have fixed benchmarks or fixed stops, in that case, the AC stage carriages are taxable. Non-AC stage carriages are exempt. Non-AC stage carriages are exempt. AC stage carriages are taxable. Now, in case of contract carriage, contract carriages are taxable. In case of non-AC stage carriage or contract carriage, in case of non-AC contract carriage, guys, if it is a public transport, then it is exempt from GST. No GST is applicable. In case it is not a public transport, others, which means it is for tourism or character or a charter hire, then it is taxable. Very, very important distinction which is to be noted over here. Contract carriage, which means you hire them and they will make you go wherever you want to go. Okay, contract carriage. If it's AC, taxable. If it's non-AC, then if it is public transport, then exempt from GST. If it is not a public transport, then tourism, charter or hire purposes is there, then it will be taxable under GST. Very, very important distinguishing factor. DTC bus will come in stage carriage. And ones which are AC, they are taxable. Which are not non-AC, they are exempt. DTC, Delhi Transport Corporation. So this was all about the passenger transport, guys. Now let us move on to the goods transport services. Okay, goods means we are transferring some tangible stuff from one place to another place. Goods transport service. Okay, again, guys, goods can be transported using road, water, air, rail. Please note that air and rail are always taxable. If you are transporting goods through air or railways, it's always taxable under any circumstance. Okay, now air and railways are fully taxable. In case of waterways, in case it is inland waterway, which means a canal, river, or a lake, in that case it is exempt from GST. In other waterways, then it is taxable under GST. Now, very, very important point in respect of water. Okay, air and rail transport is fully taxable, no doubt about it. But water will be taxable only when it is used for a non-inland waterways, which means you are using vessel, you are using ship, you are using small boats for travel in sea or ocean. That is the non-inland waterways. Okay, inland waterways is exempt. Okay, then the goods transport which are done on road, by way of a road. Okay, like trucks, trolleys, lorry, which transport goods from one place to another place by way of a road. Okay, in that case, if you are GTA, goods transport agency. And we have studied this agency in other chapters as well. Very, very important, guys, provision. So if you're a goods transport agency, then you are exempt. Then you are exempt if these conditions are satisfied. If these conditions are satisfied, then you are exempt and taxable under any other circumstance. Okay. What are the exempt GTA services? If single consignment is less than equal to 1500 rupees, then that particular consignment is exempt from GST. If multiple consignments are there and each consignment is less than 750, then that is exempt from GST again. Agro produce, if you are producing agro and transferring through GTA, exempt from GST. Milk, salt, food, grain, flour, pulses, rice, organic manure, newspaper magazines, defense equipment, relief material, transported by rail, vessel, also exempt within India. So if you are producing or supplying any of these things by way of GTA, then exempt from GST. And guys, the ones which are highlighted in green box, they will be exempt even if they are transported by rail in inland waterways, in other waterways. So if you are transferring it by rail or vessel, even then it will be exempt. What will be exempt? Milk, salt, food grain, flour, pulses, rice, organic manure, newspaper magazines, defense equipment, relief material. All these will be exempt from GST. Okay. So these are the exempt goods transport services. Goods transport services which are exempt from GST. Okay, sir. Got it. Yes, guys. Another important service, boarding and lodging services. Okay. Boarding and lodging services means hotel services, motel services, inns which are there to make you stay. So all these services are the boarding and lodging services. So boarding and lodging services are the services which are there for the people who want to stay in a hotel. They are going for a vacation. Suppose you guys, I take you to Manali for a vacation. Okay. And Manali we are booking a hotel to stay, then whether that will be eligible for GST or not, that is the question under consideration. Okay. So what is the question? Boarding and lodging services, residential dwelling for residential use is exempt from GST. If you are renting a house to stay, residential dwelling for residential use, then that is exempt from GST. If you are renting a house, a residential dwelling is there for residential use, then you are exempt from GST. So what is residential dwelling? Residential dwelling means staying in a house for a longer period of time. So in a hotel, we stay for say 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, 4 day. But if we rent a house, then we stay for a longer period of time. That is known as a residential dwelling. And usually the tenure is more than 1 month, 4-5 months. And the rent is fixed on a per month basis instead of a per day basis. Rent is fixed on a monthly basis. That is the benchmark. Accommodation provided by a religious or a charitable trust. That accommodation is also free, subject to the limits which are discussed earlier in our earlier slide. Charitable and religious precincts of a temple. Okay. Then hotel, inn, guest house, club, or a campsite. If it is for residential or lodging purposes, then if its value of supply is less than equal to 1000 per day, it is exempt from GST. If its value is 1000, more than 1000 per day, it is taxable under GST. 1000 is the benchmark. It was there in charitable religious places also and over here also. Okay. If the hotel in guest house is given for purposes like seminar, banquet hall, marriages, conferences, then what will happen? The amount is taxable under GST. It is fully taxable under GST if it is given for any other purpose. Yes, guys. Yes, I will definitely take you for vacation now. Students are saying, let us take us for vacation, huh? Yes, Mr. Pediwal is saying, let's go to Manali. Okay, Mr. Pediwal, let us make this plan, say for next to next weekend, huh? Zanab is saying, पेड़ीवाल तू ले जा सकता है हमें, तू भी तो निखिल ही है, तो अमीर नाम है तेरा, तो तू हम सबको ले जा सकता है. Brilliant comment, Zanab Khan. Kirti Batra is saying Nikhil will bear the expenses. Zanab Khan is such a naughty girl, such a naughty girl. She is a very, 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 very very tez girl, very tez girl. Surya, sir, part 5 video was not properly uploaded. Voice video was not synced properly. Kindly look into. Okay, I will look into that. Okay, I will look into that. Nikhil Gupta nahi to Nikhil Pediwal hi sahi. Anuraj is saying. Too good. This is the fun of having live classes, guys. Your comments are really, really interesting. Huh? Okay. Okay, guys. So let's start the next service. And the next service is... Yes, again, important service. Financial services. Financial services, taking loans, giving loans, etc., etc. All these services are financial services, and financial services are exempt to a certain limit. And that is what we are going to study now. What are the financial services which are exempt from GST? What are the financial services on which GST is not applicable? Let us study over here. So financial services. Okay. So guys, the bottom line is, please understand, these are the most important financial services which are given in the middle. These are the most important financial services. These are not very relevant. These are not very relevant. These are the most relevant and most important financial services. The financial services which are given by banks or other financial institutions are the financial services which are exempt from GST, like extending deposits, loans, advances, or sale and purchase of foreign exchange within banks or dealers. Okay, this is exempt from GST. Very, very important. All the services which are provided by a bank or a financial institution are exempt from GST, except for, please note, except for credit card services. Credit card services are taxable under GST. Credit card services are taxable under GST. All other services are exempt from GST. Very, 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 very important point to be noted over here. Okay. So now let's come on to the other points, and the other points are services by a business facilitator and a business correspondent, and we have already studied both of them in detail in our reverse charge mechanism. Services which are provided by service facilitator, business facilitator or business correspondent, or intermediary to business correspondent and business facilitator to banking insurance company in rural area branch. Please note that the services are only exempt if the services are given in a rural area branch. If the services are given in an urban area, then the services are not exempt. They are exempt only in case services are given on a rural area branch. Okay. Credit card wali service exempt क्यों नहीं है? There's no logic behind it, guys, but government thinks that services which are which do not deserve an exemption. So credit card is a service which is not a necessity. If you want, you can live without a credit card. And guys, trust me, I have lived in my entire life without a credit card. I don't understand the concept of credit card. So when I was in KPMG and Deloitte, and I was at a reasonably senior position, which was an associate director, I was offered platinum card of very big banks like Citibank. I was offered BlackRock card of Citibank, which is a very premier card, which is given only to very people who are having good statements and good credit scoring, etc., etc. It was given to me, but I have not even once in my lifetime have used any credit card, because I believe that I would do expense only and only from my money. I will not borrow money and do my expenses. This was the idea behind not using credit card. But the point that I'm trying to make is credit card service is a service which is not a necessity. It's a luxury. Okay. So government is saying if you are having credit card services, then we are not going to give you the exemption, because it is not serving any public welfare purpose. It is not serving any social purpose. So we are definitely not giving you the exemption. However, guys, there's no logic behind the exemptions and not exemptions which are written in law. I'm just estimating. I'm just guessing. This is just a guess, guys. I'm not very confident of what is the reason. I'm not sure. पैसा सर, पैसा. अरे निखिल पेड़ीवाल जी, आपके पास तो भी तो पैसे ही पैसा है. आपका नाम भी तो निखिल है, तो आप भी अमीर हो. आपके पास भी पैसे ही पैसा है. क्रेडिट कार्ड एक नशे की तरह है. अनुराज अब फिलोसफी में आ गया है. अनुराज, तू शायर तो नहीं मगर जीएसटी जब से पढ़ा अनुराज ने तुझको, अनुराज को शायरी आ गई। वाह वाह वाह, अनुराज ने शायरी लिख दी। मैंने आपको सिखाया क्रेडिट कार्ड यूज नहीं करना चाहिए। जनाब शेख, मैंने आपको सिखाया। वेरी गुड। यस जनाब, आपने मुझे सब सिखाया है, जो भी मैं आज हूं मैं आपकी वजह से हूं। वेरी वेरी गुड, सुपर। All right. So, what is the next exempt financial service? Next exempt financial services guarantees which are provided by central government or state government or union territory for loans taken by PSUs. If PSUs take any loan, if public sector undertaking takes any loan, and the loans which are taken by PSUs, they are guaranteed by central government, state government, or union territory, and the guarantee underlines having a guarantee paper. There are bank guarantees which are executed, and for that service the exemption is granted. So guarantee provided by central government, state government, union territory for loans taken by PSU. Please note that if the loan is taken by a private person and the guarantee is given, then it is not exempt. It is only exempt where guarantee is given or provided by central government, state government of union territory for loans taken by PSU. Next is servicing of an acquiring bank. Services of an acquiring bank, and by acquiring bank I refer to the swiping machine bank. So I've told you guys, whenever you swipe your credit card or debit card in a machine, there are three banks which are involved. Okay, one, your bank; second, bank of the supplier, shopkeeper; and third is the bank which is having the machine. Okay, these known as the machine bank. So the swiping machine bank. Now that person who's having the swiping machine bank, guys, that person is charging some amount of commission for providing the services of the swiping machine. And this particular service up to rupees 2,000 in a single transaction. If the the services are amounting to rupees 2,000 in a single transaction, then it is exempt. If it is beyond 2,000 in a single transaction, then they are taxable. So you have to remember this limit, 2,000 rupees. So if the swiping of card is done up to 2,000 rupees, then whatever are the service charges, no GST on it. But if it is more than 2,000 rupees, then what are the service charges? GST will be levied on it. That is the benchmark of the swiping bank, or the services which are given by these acquiring banks. Swiping machine bank. Name of these banks are swiping machine bank. Okay, sir, got it. And guys, yes, insurance services. Okay. Next is insurance services. What do you mean by insurance services? Let's see. इंश्योरेंस सर्विसेज। सर दो बैंक भी तो इन्वॉल्व हो सकते हैं ना? हाँ, दो बैंक भी इन्वॉल्व हो सकते हैं, लेकिन उस केस में भी जो स्वाइपिंग बैंक होगा वो तो हमेशा कमीशन लेगा ही लेगा। जिसकी स्वाइपिंग मशीन है वो हमेशा कमीशन लेगा ही लेगा, चाहे दो बैंक भी इन्वॉल्व हैं तो भी। ओके, यस गाइस। ओके, नेक्स्ट इज इंश्योरेंस। इंश्योरेंस बिजनेस, and insurance business, insurance can be given to central government, state government, union territories where premium is paid by central government, state government, or union territory. It is exempt. Whenever insurance is given to central government, state government, or union territory, it's absolutely exempt. In other cases, which means when the insurance is given to private people, then guys, if it is life insurance, let me reduce the size a bit so that you can see the full chart properly. Okay, yes. So if it's a life insurance, then annuity, it can be Army, Naval, Air Force, Central Armed Police Forces, Group Insurance Fund, or specified schemes are exempt from GST. What are specified schemes? These are the specified schemes. Janashri Bima Yojana, Aam Aadmi Bima Yojana, Micro Insurance cover up to 2 lakhs, Varisht Bima Pension Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jeevan Jyoti Bima Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, Pradhan Mantri Vaya Vandan Yojana. If these are the insurance which are there, then the services are exempt from GST. GST is not applicable on those services. We are talking about life insurance. Coming on to general insurance, if you have general insurance, then guys, this is the category of insurance which is exempt from GST. You just have to read it thrice. Don't try to mug it up. Even if it's not remembered by you properly, leave it. That's okay. Just read it once and you'll be able to recall in the examination that yes, these are exempt and these are not exempt. No need to mug them up. That's really okay. Okay, sir, got it. All right, next, very, very important. Guys, please mark. Very, very important. Legal services which are given by lawyers. legal services which are given by lawyers. Very, very important services. And yes, from an exam standpoint, it's really, really important. Okay, so legal services like advice, assistance in any branch of law, including representation. When you are gaining any advice or assistance in branch of law, including representation, then guys, if it is provided by arbitral tribunal, if it is provided by a senior advocate, if it is provided by firm of advocates, then if it is provided to a business entity, okay, and the aggregate of turnover of business entity is less than the registration threshold, if the entity to which these services are provided to, that entity is not falling under the registration threshold of GST, which is 20 lakh rupees, then it is exempt from GST. GST is not leviable on it. And if the aggregate turnover of the business entity is more than the registration threshold, then it is taxable under RCM, reverse charge mechanism. Yes, advocates seldom pay GST. They are not responsible for the compliances. Okay. So aggregate turnover of business entity in previous financial year is more than registration threshold, it is taxable under RCM provision. Then if the services are provided to a non-business entity, by arbitral tribunal or senior advocate or firm of advocates, it is exempt from GST. So if I am taking some legal advice against some people who are using my name, my fake name on social media, if I'm taking legal advice from an advocate, I'm a non-business entity person, the services are exempt from GST. GST will not be leviable. And that person who's using my fake name on the social media platforms and trying to create an academy of its own, then guys, that person will be behind the bars very, very, very soon. Very, very soon. Okay. Then these are the services which are exempt services. Okay, sir, got it. These are the legal services, guys. And yes, very, very important services. Sir, you are saying very important to every service. Guys, I'm only discussing important services in this particular marathon. I'm not discussing all the services. We are only discussing important services in this marathon. So yes, all the services which are being discussed are the important ones. You have to remember them, come what may. There is no second thought about it. No second thought about it. Okay, next is right to admission to events. Again, a very, very important service. Very important service, right to admission to an event. Okay. So, if you are gaining right to admission to some event, like there is some circus going on, there is some some water park is there where you're getting admission, zoo or museum, okay, the tickets which are sold, whether they'll be eligible for GST or not, that is the discussion which you are going to take over here. So if in case of admission tickets, admission to museum, national park, wildlife sanctuary, tiger reserve, that is zoo, archaeological monuments, is exempt from GST. Whatever is the amount of ticket, doesn't matter, it is exempt from GST. Entire amount is exempt from GST. In case of circus, if admission tickets relate to circus, dance, theatrical music performance, award function, pageant, planetarium, sports event, then if the ticket is less than equal to 500, then it's exempt from GST. If the ticket is more than 500, then it is taxable under GST. Now this 500 threshold must be remembered by you. It's very, very important that this 500 threshold should be there. Okay. Okay, then services by folk dance or classical artist, dance, music, theater. Okay, as a brand ambassador, if the classical artist, so if Sudha Chandran is performing some Bharatnatyam at some event, then that is covered under this particular category. Services provided by folk or classical artist, dance, music, theater. As a brand ambassador, if the services are provided as a brand ambassador, then they are always taxable. So if Bright Vision Academy hires Sudha Chandran as a brand ambassador, and if Sudha Chandran publicizes about Bright Vision Academy, then those services are always taxable. But if Sudha Chandran is just performing in a concert or an annual function, so we have an annual function, okay? In the annual function, we invite certain classical artists, dance, music, theater artists, and they perform for us. In that case, if the consideration is less than 1,50,000, exempt. If the consideration is more than 1,50,000, taxable. These limits you have to remember. 500, 500. Okay. 1,50,000, 1,50,000. These limits are very, very important. Admission to the events, right to admission to these events. Okay. Again, guys, something related to sports sector. Okay, something related to sports sector. Again, important service which is exempt. You need to understand the nitty-gritties of this service. Sports sector. In case of sports sector, if services are given to a recognized body, by player, referee or umpire, coach or manager, another recognized sports body. If the services are given to a recognized sports body, by whom? By player, referee, umpire, coach, another recognized sports or body, then they are exempt from GST. If the services are given by any other person apart from these people, then they are taxable. Please note that the services which are given to a recognized sports body, like BCCI is a recognized sports body. If services of umpire, referee, player, another recognized sports body is given to the BCCI, then it is exempt from GST. No GST is applicable in that particular case. But if it is given by any other person, then it is absolutely taxable. Similarly, in other cases, services provided by FIFA or Asian Football Confederation is exempt. So these two services are exempt. Admission tickets to FIFA under 17 Women Championship, FIFA under 17 Women World Championship, AFC Women's Asia Cup. These are exempt. So you need not mug them up. You just read them once, and you'll be able to learn them properly. Sponsorship of recognized sports events is exempt. And what are the recognized sports events? There's a list of recognized sports events which is given in your book. You just read them and that's it. No need to mug them up. No need to learn them properly. That is perfectly fine. It's okay. Okay, sir. Okay. And now we are going to discuss the last important service. And it's not an important service. It's a very, 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 very important service. Guys, please write in the chat box. Very, 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 very important service. It's that important. It's very, very important, guys, because in an examination, this service might come, for a question. Yes, it belongs to the government sector. It belongs to the government sector. Services which are provided by Government of India, we are going to discuss those services. Yes. So government services can be divided into these parts, guys. First, the government services are related to toll charges, registration services, granting national permit, testing, calibration, safety check, passport, visa, driving license, birth, death certificate, RBI, IRDA, SEBI, NPS, PF, ESI, ISRO, by foreign diplomatic missions, by municipality under section 243W, Panchayat under 243, 243G. These are all exempt from GST. So first is this list, which is entirely exempt from GST. First list is this list, which is entirely exempt from GST. It's entirely exempt from GST. Coming on to the next list, guys. Government services provided by the Department of Post. Okay. If Department of Post is providing some services, then they are exempt from GST, particularly with respect to speed post, express parcel, post, life insurance agency. If these services are provided to central government or union territory or local authority, then they're exempt. If these services are provided to other people, then they are taxable. So as the logic is very simple, that courier companies are eligible for GST. If speed post, express parcel, these are exempt from GST, then guys, courier companies are at a loss. Okay, so these are never exempt in case of Department of Post also. So these are taxable services. Then aircraft or vessel services, these are again taxable. Then transportation of goods or passengers is again taxable, subject to the limits which we have just now started under the previous exemptions. Okay. Then guys, any other services, any other government services which are granted to business entities? First of all, if they are granted to business entities, then those services are given to two people. Turnover of the business entity of previous financial year is less than threshold, or value of services less than 5,000, then it is exempt. So either of the two conditions are to be satisfied, that the value of services is less than 5,000 or previous year threshold of turnover is less than the limit which is given for registration. In that case, it is exempt. and in any other case, it is taxable. Okay. Then if it is given to any other person apart from business entity, like an individual, it is always exempt. Okay, it is always exempt. Like if government is providing some services to me as an individual, it is exempt from GST. GST will not be leviable. If government is providing services to business entities, then it will be taxable only if the business entities are are above the threshold limit, or the value of services is more than 5,000 rupees. Then they will be taxable. So these are the limits which are for some specified services always exempt. Specified services always exempt. Some the other services, residual services, exempt only when given to a business entity, and that too when the business entity has a lower threshold and 5,000 threshold is also not crossed. And in any other case, it is always exempt from GST. So any service which is given by government to general public is exempt from GST. That is the idea behind this section. Given to others is exempt from GST. Okay, sir, got it. Wow, Kavya Verma has also written the specific specific sections where these specific entry number where these are stated. Very good, Kavya. Although specific entry numbers are not required to be written in the examination. Sir, what's the route for becoming a prime minister so I can use tax? Zainab Khan, you first become CMA and then think about becoming the prime minister of the country. Okay, first you become CMA. Okay, guys, so today's session was a fun-filled session, and I really enjoyed this particular session. And yes, the topics covered in today's session were also very interesting. Time of supply, and we have covered the exemptions chapter also. So yes, that's all for today's session, guys. And yes, before going, please hit that like button which is there on your screen. And yes, do leave some good comments in the comment section if you like this marathon video. And if this marathon video has benefited you, then guys, after giving the examination, once you have scored good marks, then come back on this marathon and comment your marks in IDT, and comment whether these marathons were useful for you or not. It will really boost my energy, it will boost my motivation, and I'll be really up on my feet and toes to work really harder for CMA students. Yes, test series is on for all of you. The numbers are given in the chat box or in this particular ticker. So number is given over there. You can make full benefit of the test series which is going on for intermediate and final students, exclusively for CMA, free of cost for all the CMAs. So yes, you can take most benefit out of it. So yes, that's all for this session, guys. We'll be meeting in a subsequent session with more chapters of GST. Till that time, all the very best and happy studying. Bye bye. See you in the next session.